Call this meeting to order. This is the 9th meeting of the Standing Committee on Justice and Human Rights. Today is Wednesday, March the 11th, 2009. And before we proceed, I want to actually recognize some students from Quebec representing the National School of Public Service of Quebec. There's about 30 here present, but a total of 60 on the Hill. And I believe, Monsieur Lemay, they are your constituents, so if you wanted to give a greeting as well. Very short.
Très rapidement, Monsieur le Président.
Very quickly, Mr. Chairman, no, these people are not actually from my riding, but they are students from the School of National Administration. They're master's students, and so they're close to getting their doctorates or PhDs, and they come from Quebec and from other places in the world, and they're at the school in Montreal, in the School of Public Administration. So I welcome them. There are 30 here today and 30 at Foreign Affairs Committee today, and perhaps a few are listening to the Senate as well. So thank you.
What you experience here on the Hill will actually inspire you to public service, providing public service across Canada. Now, today we're pursuant to Standing Order 108, Sub 2, we are starting our study on organized crime in Canada. And we've broken up the afternoon into two portions. The first half of the meeting is dedicated to hearing representatives from the Criminal Intelligence Service of Canada. The second half, we will have three individuals as witnesses before us from British Columbia. So we'll begin with the Criminal Intelligence Service Canada, represented by Donald Dickson, who's the Director General, as well as Bud Garrick, who's the Deputy Director General. Gentlemen, welcome here. A point of order.
Mr. Chairman, as this is the beginning of the study, I would like us to clearly establish, particularly when we're talking about public services, I expect that we have briefs that should be submitted to the members in both languages, because obviously the search for information is not the same. There are very clear directives when the clerk speaks to the witnesses. They're told they have the means to do it. They should arrive here with a brief in English and in French, and the members should immediately have that information in hand and be able to consult it.
Stating that anything that is submitted to the committee has to be in both official languages. However, what you can do is you can provide a document that is only in one official language to the clerk. The clerk will have it translated, will then distribute it to the other members of the committee. So the common practice here is we give you 10 minutes to present to the committee, then we open up the floor to questions from members of the committee. So please proceed.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, well, good afternoon. As presented, my name is Don Dickson, and I am the Director General of Criminal Intelligence Service Canada. And today I am joined effectively by our Deputy Director General, who's responsible for operations within the Criminal Intelligence Service community. And his name, of course, is William Garrick. So our comments today is intended to give you some situational awareness about Criminal Intelligence Service Canada, commonly referred to as CISC. We are comprised of nearly 400 law enforcement agencies from across Canada. Since our inception in 1970, CISC has clearly been a leader in the development of an integrated and intelligence-led approach to tackling organized crime in our country. Our fundamental purpose is to facilitate the timely production and exchange of criminal intelligence within the Canadian law enforcement community. CISC, specifically Central Bureau, which is represented here today with William and I, is based here in Ottawa. We are administered under the stewardship of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and we take our direction from a National Executive Committee that is chaired today by the Commissioner of the RCMP and co-chaired by the Director General of the Sûreté. This committee, the National Executive Committee, is represented by 22 senior Canadian law enforcement executives, including police chiefs. Our Bureau, our agency, is responsible for the delivery of strategic, intelligent products and services to the national law enforcement community and government. and we serve as a national centre of excellence, I believe, in support of the effort for combating organized crime in our country. Our Bureau here in Ottawa also provide leadership, strategic direction, administrative support to the National CISC program or family. We are complemented by 10 provincial bureaus that operate independently while maintaining a national service delivery standard. And by that I mean, as we receive our direction from the National Executive Committee, they in turn receive direction from their provincial executive committees as well. They focus specifically on criminal intelligence activities within their respective provinces and provide leadership and guidance in the collection, analysis, and production of strategic intelligence products and services, specifically at the provincial level. The intelligence collected and analyzed through the provincial bureaus is instrumental in the creation of the national intelligence products and services delivered by CISC Central Bureau, of which there are approximately 12 products that we produce throughout the year. Embedded into Central Bureau is a strategic analytical service that is responsible specifically for the production of various strategic intelligence products, including annual release of the National Threat Assessment, the National Criminal Intelligence Estimate, and the Report on Organized Crime in Canada each year. The Strategic Analytical Service also develops and implements a strategic early warning methodology which is used by all the bureaus, which is a system to enhance the current law enforcement practices with a proactive approach to crime with the aim of controlling, if that's possible, or certainly preventing. The CISC Criminal Intelligence Service report that I refer to on organized crime provides the public with important information regarding organized crime and highlights some of the ways that the criminal groups can victimize Canadians. CISC believes an informed public is better able to protect themselves from the threat posed by organized crime. The report also includes information regarding the dynamics of criminal intelligence groups or criminal groups, their methods, their modus operandi, and the criminal markets within which they operate. I would like to give you a sense of the status of organized crime in Canada and speak to the foundations of the organized crime marketplace. In developing the National Threat Assessment, which I spoke to earlier, CISC builds upon developing integrated threat assessment methodologies and assesses organized crime in Canada specifically from a criminal market perspective. Each market is examined thoroughly with regard to its scope, magnitude, and dynamics of organized crime groups and their specific involvement. The main criminal markets assessed by us are illicit drugs, contraband tobacco, illegal gambling, illicit firearms, cyber crime, intellectual property rights, humans as a commodity, financial crime, and vehicle-related offenses such as theft. While the criminal marketplace is evolving, several key findings remain consistent over time. The following have been observed over several years and are considered to be the mainstays of the Canadian organized crime marketplace. For example, in the Lower Mainland of British Columbia, Southern Ontario, Greater Montreal regions are considered to be the primary criminal hubs, with both the largest concentration of criminal groups as well as the most active and dynamic criminal markets. The illicit drug market remains the largest criminal market in terms of extent, scope, and degree of involvement by the majority of the organized crime groups, more than 80%. Where law enforcement successes have been disrupted or dismantled specific crime groups, this impact regrettably tends to be short-term as it creates a temporary void into which the market expansion occurs or creates opportunities for well-situated organized criminal groups to exploit. In general, criminal markets are highly resistant to long-term disruption as they continue to exist in direct response to meeting consumer demands in this country. Many organized crime groups have the capability and capacity to exploit international borders. International linkages maintained by several groups ensure that the supply and distribution chains for a number of commodities remain strong and vibrant. In addition, strategically located areas on the Canadian and United States border provide significant opportunities for the movement of illegal commodities and people without requiring large or sophisticated operations. Exploitation and infiltration of legitimate businesses by organized crime groups plays a critical role in undermining public confidence in a number of legitimate markets while contributing to the resilience of many organized crime groups. In some cases, legitimate businesses enable groups to launder money, funds, facilitate criminal activity, such as through the use of import and export companies, commingle listed and illicit goods, as well as further insulate many groups from law enforcement action. For our 2008 National Threat Assessment, more than 900 organized crime groups were identified as operating in Canada. And for our analytical purposes within the CISC family, we have categorized them into 4 levels of threat. Category 1, or the upper echelon as we've referred to it, these groups pose the most significant level of threat based on their role, scope, and criminal activities, which are primarily national and international. Further, there is a Category 1 watch list which we maintain, and these are the groups that demonstrate an emergent significant threat level. And there are no less than 16 groups within the upper echelon. Category 2 groups that we keep track of are those groups that operate with international or interprovincial scope. And in Canada today, there are more than 300 of such groups. Category 3, these groups are confined to a single province, but encompass more than one area, meaning more than one city or one region. And there are more than 100 such groups operating in Canada. And our Category 4 group, which we'd probably be most familiar with, these are the groups that are confined to a single area, such as a town or a city, and there are more than 430 of these groups operating in Canada. In the year 2008, 78% of the organized crime groups were active in the illicit drug trade, and this is consistent with the previous year and down somewhat from 2006, where 81% were involved in such activity. The financial crime market is the second most significant market, with the involvement of 12% of the total organized crime groups in Canada, meaning 12% of more than 970 organized crime groups. The integrated provincial threat assessments, which we receive at the national level from all 10 of our bureaus, are utilized specifically by local and provincial law enforcement agencies to determine their exact priorities in combating organized crime. As well, the National Threat Assessment is used by a new committee which was stood up more than a year and a half ago through the CACP, the Canadian Associations of Chiefs of Police, and this group is called the Canadian Integrated Response to Organized Crime. This committee is made up of senior law enforcement officials from each of the provinces and territories across this country and is currently chaired by a Deputy Commissioner of the Ontario Provincial Police and the Senior Deputy Commissioner of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. And this group is there to assist in determining the strategic law enforcement priorities to combat organized crime. And both William and I are an integral part of this group to ensure that priorities that are being discussed within this milieu is available to us so that we have an understanding of the scope and span of activities that are going on across this country. The overall impact of organized crime, I must say, is not easily measured, but is significant due to the spectrum of criminal markets operating in Canada. Some forms of criminal activity are highly visible and affect individuals and communities on a daily basis, such as street-level drug trafficking, assaults, violence, and most certainly intimidation. Conversely, more covert operations pose long-term threats to Canadian institutions and consumers, such as mortgage fraud, vehicle theft, and identity fraud. Our annual report on organized crime is a product of a coordinated law enforcement community effort that provides Canadians with situational awareness, an overview of organized crime activities across this country, and the scope of these operations within Canadian communities. The report on organized crime is produced by Criminal Intelligence Service Canada with the aim of informing all Canadians of the socio-economic effect organized crime has on our communities, and it encourages the public to continue to collaborate and work cooperatively with law enforcement to combat organized crime. Mr. Chairman, those are our opening comments. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Before we turn to questions, I want to let members of the committee know that I've had discussions with Messrs. Garrick and Dixon. There may be some information they would share with us, but only in camera. So if there's a need for us to do that, and there's a distinct possibility there is, we'll bring them back closer to the end of the study. So we've got the opportunity to receive that information as well. The second question I have to members of the committee, given the fact that we've divided the witnesses up into two panels today, are you willing to reduce the speaking time in the first go-around to 5 so we can get more questions in? Is that acceptable? All right. We'll then go to Mr. Dosanjh. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon and Mr. Garrick, for being here. I have some general questions. I'm not going to ask you anything specific. You obviously gather information from all jurisdictions, the reports from each province, and then you knit them together into a national report. From British Columbia's point of view, let me be a bit parochial. It seems that in British Columbia, the police authorities were not able to foretell what is happening today on the streets in Greater Vancouver in particular. If they had been able to, they would have tried to disrupt or do something to mitigate what is happening. So, I'm sensing that the intelligence gathering at that level and putting it together is not as effective as it could be, and it obviously doesn't do much good then, doesn't do as much good when it comes into your report nationally. So I would like you to direct your mind to what it is that you believe policing agencies and intelligence gathering activities on the ground need more or different from what they have today, so that what you present to Canadians is able to tell Canadians that the policing community has the ability to predict and to disrupt preemptively, if possible, some of what's happening today.
First, I must tell you, and as you indicated, our community is large, and that we bring the information, or to use your words, knit the information together. I think it's important for all of us to also understand and appreciate. To do this, we have a national database designed specifically for organized crime activity. And each of our bureaus, and specifically our partners, as you heard in my opening comment, there are approximately 400 law enforcement agencies across this country. There are 264 of those law enforcement agencies plugged into our national database, and each time an operation is initiated, for the most part, it is their responsibility to put that information on the national database so that all parties can see the initiation of an investigation and can feed off that. To go more directly to your point as it pertains to police entities in a specific province, and I just speak in generic terms, my experience with the provincial executive committees at the provinces, and those provincial executive committees are represented by the senior law enforcement executives in that province. In a number of the meetings that I've been at, they sit down and they talk about the specific groups of interest, the groups that are posing the most significant threat, and they also, which would be applicable to them, they speak of very detailed operational activity. And I would assume in the province of British Columbia, certainly the last meeting that I was at, they were actively involved in such discussions.
So from what you've said, you're not able to tell me what it is that might be needed more on the ground to assist them. Obviously, I'm not being critical of them. Obviously, they have not been very successful in either predicting or preparing for what's happening and haven't been able to disrupt this very well. And I'm not being critical. I just want to get a sense as a committee from you what tools or resources are required so that they are better equipped or fully equipped to deal with this more effectively.
I can certainly speak to that, sir. There's a number of issues that factor into this. Certainly the nature of crime to begin with, the fluidity of it, and some of the market issues that we spoke about. But to get directly to the point of your question, as a resource issue, one of the initiatives that the Criminal Intelligence Service Canada has taken on as a result of a tasking from the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police is the development of a made-in-Canada criminal intelligence model. We currently don't have such a model in Canada that really has the true processes, capabilities, technology that we need across the Canadian spectrum to gather the intelligence correctly and in a timely fashion. It's kind of, as you said, it's a piecemeal approach oftentimes. We currently have the project ongoing, and certainly as your committee goes along, we can provide detailed information on that if you wish.
Okay.
Thank you. We're at the end of the 5 minutes. Monsieur Menard, 5 minutes.
Oui, merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I must say that I'm a little disappointed with your testimony, and I hope, Mr. Chairman, that we're going to straighten things out here. We're meeting, and you're telling us that drugs are being sold in Canada and people steal things. That doesn't really help us very much, in all honesty. The Bloc Québécois and all of the parties supporting it tabled a motion to find out what the legislative tools are that you have, and I didn't expect to hear such generalities. I was hoping to hear something a little bit more high level. I have been in this working in this area for years. I was in Montreal in '95 when young Mr. Desrochers was killed in my riding, and I was talking about the senior management, senior people thought that we were going to be able to dismantle these groups and gangs, and it was made very clear to me that we needed to create new legislation. There are even people in my riding who went door to door, and we were able in the end to draft new anti-gang legislation. So do you feel that sections 4, 67, 11, 12, and 13 have been productive of the new criminal code provisions for street gangs? So when I was starting this organized crime study, we weren't really talking about street gangs, but I feel like we're facing the second generation of street gangs now. So tell us, do you think that street gangs are becoming more professional and that they are less and less race-based, and that they are more and more working together with organized crime members? So how do you see them, street gang members, and what do you need as new legislative tools? Don't talk to me about generalities.
Okay, specifically to your question as it pertains to street gangs, your commentary specific to that is exactly right, and we certainly agree with you, and that is the perception of local law enforcement. As it pertains to where we are from a Criminal Intelligence Service Canada perspective, I would take a somewhat different view than what you articulated in that.
Attendez, sur les gangs de rue, là,
No, on street gangs. My specific question is, are we right to believe that in Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver, street gangs are professionalizing? So what is the reality of these street gangs? Are they the main stakeholders really in organized crime as we're speaking to each other?
I would not suggest that they are the main stakeholders as it pertains to organized crime. In fact, they are reflected in numbers of about 300 street gangs. But to be fair to your question, the people that could answer that in absolute detail would be our provincial bureaus, because they are far more tactically oriented than I am at these strategic levels. So to get into detail as pertains to day-to-day activities of street gang, I
alors
would
si vous
not
n'avez
be.
pas la réponse, je vais vous poser une deuxième question.
Right. If you don't have the answer, I'll move on to a second question. Concerning the Hells Angels, are they still playing a leadership role in the area of organized crime? And is my information correct as to whether these people were meeting without with badges? And is it true that now we're starting to see the Hells Angels meeting and they're using their badges once again? So as a committee, you know that we worked very hard in creating a criminal code provision that banned the use of these badges and those kinds of criminal organizational meetings. So talk to me about the Hells Angels specifically.
I could speak specifically to outlaw motorcycle gangs in general. Yes, certainly, they're still in the top tier of organized crime groups across Canada. Certainly the Hells Angels have not gone away and in fact are the premier outlaw motorcycle gang group in Canada. There have been some outstanding initiatives by local law enforcement, such as Operation Axe that recently took place throughout Quebec, which has really thrown them into an area of disruption. They have not stopped. For sure they have not stopped. They are an area of priority for law enforcement. They're involved in that activity, for sure.
Thank you. We'll move on to Mr. Kilmartin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for being here. Just a couple of quick things. I didn't catch how many gangs or organized crime units are in the national, international level, the top level. How many were there?
At the higher echelon, there are no less than 16 organized crime groups at the Category 1 level.
And I'm assuming in Category 1 level, they have active or extensive interaction with organized crime units elsewhere in the world.
That's correct.
And those units, would they be primarily in the United States, or are they all over the globe?
They would be all over the world.
In terms of the 400 agencies that belong to CISC, are all of those public police services as opposed to any private agencies?
Of the 400 agencies, these are law enforcement agencies specifically.
Okay. I'm just wondering, in terms of your inability to answer one of the questions of Mr. Menard, the 10 provincial bureaus, we're going to be traveling. Are there people within those bureaus that we could be bringing forward to the committee as we move across the country?
Absolutely. I think to connect all of the dots as it pertains to Criminal Intelligence Service, you would do yourself a great favor by stopping in to see a number of the bureaus, and after this session here, secretarially, we could respond back to you on agencies that we think would be, or bureaus that would be a benefit to you, and then for that you can make your own decision.
And they will be able to give us information about tactical operations, obviously not specific ones, but generally what their tactical operations are.
I think, as you noted in my opening comments, they are independent of us because they are under the guidelines of their provincial executive committees, but that's something that you could have a discussion with them on. The same as the chair had the discussion with myself and Bud before we started. If there's an opportunity for more clarification, and we could do that in camera, then we're willing to do that. But clearly the provincial bureaus are in the same situation. They should be able to speak to you on tactical matters of interest.
I don't know if I've missed these, but I haven't seen any public reports from the provincial bureaus. Have I missed that?
In the provinces themselves, they have a number of publications that they put out.
And those are public?
Well, some are public and some are to their police constituency. So, for example, in the province of Ontario, where there's more than 60 law enforcement agencies, Criminal Intelligence Service Ontario communicates with each of their partners through bulletins, annual reports, and things of like.
But those wouldn't be public. Those bulletins are kept within.
Yeah,
the
I don't
agency.
have. I know they publish within their partnership. I don't have any firsthand knowledge of them going public with documentation that they have.
In terms of the various crime areas or markets, I think, as you put it, I didn't hear you say human trafficking. Are you doing that? I don't know if I missed that. Is that one of the categories?
Yeah, actually, I did mention it in passing.
Those are all the questions I have for now, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Comartin. We're moving on to Mr. Norlock. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, gentlemen, for coming today. Some of my questions will be geared specifically towards my area, in other words, my riding and areas in Eastern Ontario, but not necessarily because I think they're representative of the rest of Canada. And I know that this committee, of course, organized crime and some of the things we read in the newspaper are generally situated in the large cities. My question is, and I had a roundtable on crime in my riding, and I invited, of course, the chiefs of police of every police department, as well as victims groups and crime prevention groups. So the whole sort of community relating around that. And we heard from our police chiefs that some of the same things that are affecting big cities are affecting our smaller towns and cities. In my riding, we've had a couple of deaths that have been investigated by the OPP that sure sound to me, when you read the newspapers, which in my old line of work were called, that's the white intelligence you get from the newspapers, and from your testimony would be considered, organized crime would consider that white intelligence from their perspective. In other words, things that are available to the public. Can I get from you a sense of, and do you keep sort of, or do you, obviously some of your 400 agencies are small town police forces, so the feedback you're getting, the organized crimes and the violence and the drugs and gangs and guns we see in the city, are you seeing that, are you getting that information from your smaller police departments?
Yes, sir, we are. And also, to go back to the beginning of the question, when we speak of more than 900 crime groups, there's an ebb and tide there. That number does not maintain itself at that level. More than 150 or 200 are dispersed each year, but then other people follow in behind them. And speaking of disbursement or displacement, some of the major police departments who have the ability to be extremely aggressive with some of their organized crime groups, in some cases those organized crime groups move to other jurisdictions and reestablish themselves because they're no longer able to be productive in that area.
So those other jurisdictions would possibly and probably be smaller municipalities?
Absolutely. And hence the significance of our national computer database. With all of these crime groups, and as you've heard, more than 900 of them, you know, it wasn't that many years ago that we really didn't know how many organized crime groups were out there. And now we've been able to identify more than 970 of such groups and place them on a specific map and be able to analyze their activities to the extent that we can through aggressive and progressive law enforcement action. So as they move about, it is for the most part not unknown to us because for all the municipalities that participate in a very meaningful way by putting their investigations onto the national database, then that information is available to every jurisdiction that is plugged in to that system. And I ought to tell you, there are more than 250 such agencies that use that database each and every day. And this year, there were more than 2 million transactions on that database. and there's no less than 2,400 users that have the ability to log on and to do their investigative research.
One moment. Do we have a problem with translation?
I hope this isn't cutting into my...
No, it isn't. Everything's okay?
Okay.
Proceed, Mr. Lowe.
Thank you. In my riding, of course, is Canada's largest federal penitentiary, the Warkworth Penitentiary, and there was a change, and a lot of folks don't realize some of the changes. It's a medium security penitentiary. When it was first opened, most of the criminals in that, or most of the inmates there, were people who had committed crimes, property crimes, frauds, etc. Today, most of the people in that institution are, for all intents and purposes, the better behaved murderers, etc., etc. And I guess what I'm leading to is organized crime within, or criminals who have an organized crime background in our correctional institutions. Is part of your information sharing, is part of that information shared with regard to inmates? In other words, Corrections Canada is involved in your group?
Yeah, most certainly. When we speak about the members that we have within Criminal Intelligence Service Canada, one of our key partners is, in fact, Corrections Services Canada. We have a number of secondments of members of outside agencies that are working within our Centre Bureau. We are very shortly going to have a member of Corrections Services Canada with us on a full-time basis at the National Intelligence Officer level, just like we have one from CBSA, the Border Services, and one from the Military Police. We have a wide spectrum to reach out to, and corrections is certainly one of our key areas that we're looking at.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Norlock. We're going to move on to Mr. LeBlanc.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today and for your comments. I'd like to follow up a bit on the very incisive questions that my colleague, Mr. Dosanjh, was asking when he ran out of time. You alluded to sort of a national or a Canadian plan or model in terms of criminal intelligence. Perhaps you could expand on that, specifically with respect to technology, which you mentioned. I have a sense that in terms of the tools that police forces need to really deal with the growing problem of organized crime, the laws haven't kept up in terms of ability to get search warrants for. I know that since 2005 there have been proposals around modernizing investigative techniques, specifically with respect to intercepting cell phones, emails, BlackBerries. The old tools and the old laws and regulations and common law around search warrants, lawful access, I think hasn't kept up with, in fact, the technology that organized crime is using. What resources do you think are needed, both financial or human resources, but more importantly in terms of legislative resources to deal with modernizing that regime?
I think there are a number of initiatives that are already going forward that speak to that, and the issues that you raised are very valid ones. You know, the technology has changed. We're seeing more of the use of the BlackBerries, the PDAs, cell phones, issues such as that. And obviously, the current intercept laws that we have, the current regulations, are extremely cumbersome and time-consuming. And oftentimes, we need a timely fashion to intercept the issues. As you're speaking to technology in general, one of the issues that we're trying to do at the national level is to ensure that all of the police departments across Canada, all of the law enforcement agencies are operating off of the same technology so that we can communicate better. In particular, we can share information. Although we do have the current national database, it is getting old. So we are currently have an initiative forward to progress on that and get a new one, which will help in that area for sure.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Dixon.
Actually, and just to continue with what William's indicating, and back to where you started, the Canadian Criminal Intelligence Model, which we introduced a few moments ago, we embarked on this venture about 2 years ago, where we're designing a Canadian Criminal Intelligence Model with the intent of attaching it to the accountability framework of the police chiefs across this country. It is something that we've been working on. We've done extensive surveys. We've done extensive meetings with senior police executives, their CIDs, criminal intelligence divisions, their criminal intelligence branches. And the aim of this model is to ensure consistency and coherency in our approach to criminal intelligence and combating organized crime across the country. So to bring a sense of unity and synergy to the 400 law enforcement agencies that we have across the country.
I thank you. I appreciate that. But I'm interested in understanding if you have a view, or if your colleagues with whom you work across the country have a view, on what legislative changes we could make that would deal with what Mr. Gary, he talked about time or cumbersome or time consuming. Is that because you need more resources to prepare the application for the search warrant, or is that because you have inadequate laws which would give police forces access to data that servers, cell phone providers may have, or is that simply because you can't find a judge who's available to sign the warrant, or you want sort of a revolving warrant where what are you suggesting around the process to expedite that?
I would say you hit the two key areas at the beginning, which are legislative changes to make the process more in line with new technologies, and the resources able to keep up to that. And particularly when I talk about resource, not just men on the ground, boots on the ground, but also talking about the technology to keep pace with the technology that organized crime uses. They have the money available to go out and purchase it as they see fit. We oftentimes are tied into budgetary issues, and we can't keep pace with what they're doing. So it's exactly the two main areas that you spoke about at the beginning.
Okay, can you just give me an example in terms of what they have and in terms of technology, and you guys can't keep pace? What kind of things?
Well, I don't think I can pinpoint a specific issue, but to give you kind of a sense of it, some of the new tools that they use, whether it be a new type of cell phone or satellite phone or a new type of BlackBerry, we may not have the ability to intercept those in all the areas across Canada.
The technological
okay. ability.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We're moving on to Mr. Lemay. You have 5 minutes.
Merci.
Thank you for being here. And I have to tell you that I'm a bit surprised. There's a file that I'm very interested in organized crime in this area. And you have to realize that you have to be able to follow the track or or money. So everything's done obviously with the goal of making money. So following cell phones, I was a lawyer for 30 years. I'm a criminal defense lawyer. My clients knew how to intercept these things. So if you're still at that level, I can see that you have problems. What I'd be interested in hearing in this study that we're undertaking is how have you established ways to follow what I am calling the track of this money? Did you have to trace this money to see how organized crime launders billions of dollars? We're not talking millions anymore. It's billions of dollars that they're making. Are we in a position to know whether they've invested in public businesses or private businesses, but companies that have this facade of respectability? Are you able to tell us that? And I'm not asking you to tell me that today. Obviously, we'd be in camera for that. But are you able today to follow the track of these funds? Because even 10 years back, you were not. You could follow it until one point in time, and then you'd lose it. In Barbados, for example, or the Cayman Islands, or in Liechtenstein, in Switzerland, Monaco. Today, are we in a position to follow the track of these funds, the money trail?
The answer to that specific question is yes. And I am confident in your hearings in camera across this country, and I'll be more than happy to suggest a couple of bureaus that you may want to speak to, which would give you an outstanding illustration of success as it pertains to your exact question. But from a tactical perspective, myself and Bud would be the wrong people to give you a direct comment on that, but we know that there are areas that there are people that you could speak to as part of your study to reassure you, in fact, that not only is it achievable, it is being done today, followed through to successful prosecution.
Let's talk about organized crime, about the organizations. Is it true that currently organized crime is very much embedded, even at the international level, in corporations that have this public respectability? Is it true that, from what we're hearing, that they have ins with big multinationals, and that is how they're laundering their money? And could we get information on that?
Again, I can't talk specifics in this area. There are certainly people that we could point towards that can talk specifics. Interestingly enough, one of the areas that we are very much looking at right now is exactly the area of financial crime and talking about.
OK. Mais ce qui m'intéresse, moi,
No, but what interests me, and you can see this coming, I'm sure, is whether or not at the international level there are relationships between you and Interpol and the CIA, the DEA. Is this really something that's robust and solid around the world so that information goes around the world instantly?
Well, I wouldn't say instantly. Clearly, we have partnerships that go beyond the borders of Canada, certainly the United States and Interpol, which you're referring to, and other like organizations where we exchange information. We also travel back and forth and keep each other abreast of trends, projected trends and activities of concern in each of those areas. So as it pertains to sharing of information, that is very, very robust at this point in time.
Thank you. We're going to go to Monsieur Petit. You've got 5 minutes, and unfortunately that will probably be the last question. And I've got one follow-up question for our witnesses. So, Monsieur Petit.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Bonjour.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, gentlemen. I'm going to ask you a more general question, because I'm going to try and read the report that you published last year, at least. My problem is the following. Over the last year, for example, in Montreal, that drugs come in through the ports, so on boats. At Trudeau Airport, they have apparently caught employees who were bringing in drugs. So according to the intelligence or the information we have from the police, Montreal is a real hub for drugs. So this is something that people pay hard cash for. So I'm following really Mr. Lemay in this line of questioning. Within your structure, any ties with the ports in Canada, because there are several that are under federal jurisdictions, and do you have links with the airports? They're supposed to be well monitored. So on the federal level, do you have connections with people doing this work? And can you find out if a person with a given passport has gone 10 times to Colombia or in some others, or to Switzerland even, some suspect travel? Do you have that level of cooperation?
Concern, and as it pertains to ports, that is a very, very active portfolio at the national level in our offices here in Ottawa, and very active within the provincial bureaus that have ports, where they are aggressively pursuing all serious crime and organized crime in each of those areas. Some of the other aspects of your question are very tactical in nature, and I would not be able to comment upon those. But as it pertains to the criminality and the drug activity that you speak to in the province of Quebec, and specifically in Montreal, I am very well aware of an aggressive, offensive, aggressive campaign by the senior law enforcement executives, including the chiefs and the director generals in that province.
If I could just follow up. As I may have mentioned earlier, one of our partners, certainly at the national level and within provincial areas, is Canada Border Services Agency. We deal extensively with them, and they are exactly there for the reasons that you just spoke about.
I have a little time? Thank you. Second question. I'd like to ask Mr. Nixon or Mr. Garrick, in Montreal, over the last while, there has been criminal organization groups who have clashed in the streets. There have even been murders, and you've read things as I haven't even in the papers. Now, are you in a position, and because earlier Mr. Maynard was asking a question on this, along this line, he had someone in his riding. There was a bomb that the Hells Angels set off, and he died. So do you have, I don't know, some kind of electronic classification system to say, okay, we've seen this person in this area, we've seen him somewhere else? Do you have any technical tools and electronic tools that you can use to follow that kind of person?
The national database, which I spoke about, that is used by many of our partners, is probably the most prolific in the province of Quebec. And all information pertaining to criminality in the province of Quebec is put on to that system each and every day, and it is slavishly followed, along with intelligence officers and analytical folk that are looking at that database each and every day to answer the very questions that you are asking us today. It is well entrenched in the province of Quebec.
Well, gentlemen, I think our time has run out. Before we dismiss you, I'd like to just close with one question. I'm advised that the challenges we face in trying to address organized crime are not only legislative ones, they're not only judicial ones, they're not only law enforcement ones. I'm advised that organized crime is a criminal enterprise that stretches well into the prison system, and the suggestion is you have to cut off the head right in the prison systems to make any progress in fighting organized crime. Do you agree with that characterization? And if so, what can you suggest can be done in a very short period of time? What would you suggest we do in terms of our study, as well as specifically to address some of the problems that actually are occurring within our prison system?
I would suggest that you are correct in some level of that assumption. Certainly that there is still a significant amount of leadership within the prison systems in the organized crime region. Again, that is why one of our key partners that has been on board and is coming on board in a more fulsome manner is Corrections Services Canada, so that we could have the correct amount of intelligence to pinpoint the law enforcement agencies towards the members that are still engaged in that. And certainly CSC, Corrections Services Canada, is very aggressive in their intelligence gathering on that area.
Thank you. All right, gentlemen, thank you for your testimony. If you would make sure that we have the contact information for the various bureaus across Canada, so we can perhaps get them in as witnesses as we travel across the country. Thank you. We'll take a 3-minute recess as we clear out and bring in the next set of witnesses. Thank you. Okay, we'll reconvene the meeting. And we're pleased to have with us now for our organized crime study 3 witnesses from British Columbia. We have Steve Brown, we have Lois Schellenberg, we have Eileen Mohan. Welcome here. We're looking forward to hearing you speak to us. As you know, each of you has 10 minutes to present. I'm not sure you're going to use up all of that time, but please feel free to begin. I believe, Mr. Brown, you're going to start. Is that correct? Perhaps before Mr. Brown starts, I should mention that Mrs. Schellenberg is actually from my riding of Abbotsford, and Mr. Brown is actually from Mr. Warwa's riding in British Columbia. And I believe, Ms. Mohan, you are either from Mr. Dollywood's riding or very close, correct, from the city of Surrey?
Yes.
So we're looking forward to hearing what you have to say to us. Please.
Well, my name is Steve Brown. I'm appearing before you today because some gangster murdered my brother-in-law, Ed Schellenberg. And Ed was my, not only my brother-in-law, but he was my business partner. And he was also my friend. Ed was murdered on October 19th, 2007, execution style, while he knelt in front of the gas fireplace he was repairing. He was doing his job. Ed's story actually starts in 2002, when 8 people, 4 youths and 4 adults, beat a 16-year-old boy to death with baseball bats and iron pipes at a karaoke bar in Coquitlam, British Columbia. The 4 adult males, although charged with second-degree murder,
were offered plea bargains to manslaughter. A judge sentenced each of the 4 adults to an 18-month conditional sentence for beating somebody to death. They were basically sent to their rooms for 18 months. A subsequent sentence appeal by the Crown was denied. When we fast forward to October 19th, 2007, I was awakened while I was snoozing in front of my TV by the sound of our phone ringing. It was 9:35 p.m., and Lois Schellenberg was calling to ask why at this late hour Ed would still have any reason to be working. He was not at home, and he was not answering his cell phone. I said I knew absolutely nothing about it and thought it very strange that if Ed had had problems on the job, that he probably would have called me. But it wasn't until we started to hear the news reports that evening that emergency personnel had been called to the same high-rise that we had been working at all that week and that Ed was working that day, where they discovered the bodies of 6 adult males, all shot to death in one suite on the 15th floor of that high-rise. It was then that we knew that something horrible must have happened to Ed. And we knew that Ed was going into suite 1505 and that it was the last service call he was going to do in the whole complex. Since then, we've learned that of the 4 gangbangers targeted and killed in that suite, along with Ed, 2 of them, named Michael Lal and Eddie Narong, were in fact 2 of the 4 adults convicted in the manslaughter beating of the 16-year-old boy in a karaoke bar in Coquitlam that I mentioned previously. In the time between their brush with the law in 2002 and their deaths in 2007, Narong and Lal amassed a breathtaking total of 48 criminal offenses. Serious charges, including drug trafficking, possession of drugs for the purpose of trafficking, possession of restricted weapons, resisting arrest, and breach of recognizance. In Narong's case, he was charged with 15 counts of breaching his bail conditions, but he was still out on the streets because each time he was brought before a judge, he was granted bail yet again. In 2005, Michael Lal was convicted of several drug trafficking offenses and himself of 5 counts of breaching bail conditions. His sentence for that, another 17-month conditional sentence. I believe that I can reasonably argue that if these 2 persons, Lal and Narong, were handed sentences appropriate to their crimes, they would have been in jail, and Ed Schellenberg would likely still be alive today. We asked ourselves, how could something like this happen in our country? How could this happen? And this is what we found out. We've gone on this journey. We've gone on a very steep learning curve to try to answer these questions. Why was Ed murdered? We are presently experiencing in British Columbia, around this gang violence on the streets, what I would call a perfect storm of lawlessness and injustice. Let me share with the members of the committee what I believe are the conditions that have come together to create this perfect storm. And I can assure you, Ed's story is not a one-off. It is, in fact, the tip of the iceberg in British Columbia. Over the last 5 years, the number of these street gangs operating in the Vancouver area has grown from just a handful to well over 100 in just 5 years. The reason why this is happening is we have learned that there's been a complete failure in our justice system to hand out appropriate sentences for the offenses that these gangsters are charged with under the Criminal Code and the Controlled Substances Act. And I'm saying a complete failure, and I'm not overstating it. I have been told by a criminologist who's been studying the crime stats for over a 30-year period in BC, he's told me I cannot overstate the situation we're in British Columbia. On the federal level, let's take grow-ops as one example. Everybody knows grow-ops are big business in BC. at least $8 billion a year. And the marijuana is distributed by organized crime, and they trade it for heroin and illegal handguns south of the border. And the money laundering is also very much involved. Yet in BC, and get this, the statistics show that for every 100 grow-ops, only 3 or 4 of those grow-ops that encounter our justice system result in any kind of punishment like jail time. That means 96 out of the 100 get away scot-free. Is this a good message to send to organized crime? Let me explain to you just how we have found out the justice system falls on its own sword. If you start with those 100 grow-ops, 35% of the time our police treat them as non-cases. They seize the plants, they seize the equipment, they tell them they've been naughty boys and girls. So 35% of our tax dollars going to policing a controlled substance, the police are shooting blanks. Out of that 100, that leaves 65 grow-ops. Of those remaining 65, 42% of the time our federal prosecutors stay the drug charges. 42%. So what are we paying for? That leaves 37 grow-ops that make it to our courts in BC. So what happens there? Historic figures show that only 9% of the total number of grow-ops and the charges having gone through the courts in BC actually result in a sentence that includes jail time. And the average length of that jail sentence, only 3 months. And they only get fined on average $1,200. And this is after they've stole hydro to run the grow-op at around $1,800. Do we have any doubt why we have an organized crime and street gang problem in BC? This is just one element of the perfect storm. What we've learned on the provincial side is mind-boggling. In British Columbia, we are experiencing an epidemic of plea bargains. Plea bargains are arranged for over 90% of the serious charges before our provincial courts. The number is actually 95%. Now think about that. In BC, a plea bargain is done behind closed doors by 2 lawyers, and then it's presented to a judge for rubber stamping. There are no arguments, there's no public hearing, there's no giving of evidence. Members of Parliament have passed and are introducing laws that for certain kinds of offences will carry a mandatory minimum sentence. However, in British Columbia, and I can assure you it's happening now, the police will lay the charge at that level that carries a mandatory minimum, but the provincial Crown will plead down from that. It's happening all the time. And Ed's case is the only case in point that I need to articulate on that. Overriding everything that's happening in British Columbia, there is a shocking trend towards leniency in the judiciary around sentencing. Our sentencing judges must follow the BC Court of Appeal guidelines that frankly make a mockery of the maximum sentencing provisions of the Criminal Code of Canada. To sum it up, the trial judges impose sentences far below even these weak guidelines established at the BC appellate level. And the public are completely bewildered by what's going on. The judiciary's failure to appropriately address these criminals the first or the second or even the 10th time before the court has created, in my view, a new class of psychopathic career criminals. They have such contempt for the police, for the courts, for you lawmakers, and now even members of the public. Ed Schellenberg. But there's actually 4 innocent victims of this gang violence over the last 2 years. Ed Schellenberg, Chris Mohan, Kirk Holyfield, and Jonathan Barber. Do you members realize that in the Vancouver area we have drug-addicted property crime offenders that have over 100 convictions? and they're still on the streets. What happens to them after 50 conviction threshold? Their sentences become less. Any time they spend in jail becomes less, from the 50 to 100 level. Is that what we want to be known for? Is that a good message to send to people who can't control their own behavior? We've heard a lot of talk about the 2-for-1 on the remand. In British Columbia, it's a joke. The defense lawyers are allowed to delay, and they dictate the sentences for their clients. The justice system, the good guys, we don't have a say in it. And the handguns. In 2008, there was only 50 gang hits in the Greater Vancouver area, a record. To date, in 2009, 33. The situation is out of control. Handgun offenses, the charges are stayed all the time. Not enough evidence. They have loaded assault rifles. They have hidden compartments. Handguns with silencers. Charges stayed, not enough evidence. That wasn't the case 10 years ago. So what's changed? Well, it's this new brand of criminal that's been created, the gangsters. They wear body armor. They're being arrested and found with military-style weapons, and they're driving armored vehicles. Yet, with all of those things in mind, in British Columbia, they still get bail. Something is terribly wrong in British Columbia. When we see conditional sentences for manslaughter, which is murder, an 18-month conditional sentence, what's the message we send about the value of a human life? I believe the criminal justice system has rewarded and enabled this antisocial behavior. There are no fear of consequences to act as a deterrent. Really, the sentencing around these gangsters it's laughable. Bail, all I can say about bail is that in British Columbia, the people who you think should never get bail, they always get bail. Even though more people are remanded, these dangerous, psychopathic career criminals, they get bail every time. We're just at a loss, the public. No matter how psychopathic their behavior, how their presence in the community poses a substantial public safety risk, everybody gets bail, it seems. And I believe that British Columbians have been backed into a constitutional corner on this one issue alone. These people are being released onto the streets after serious criminal charges, but they reoffend while on conditional sentence. All the time. There's no consequences. They are a menace to themselves, menace to society.
I'm going to ask you to wind up because we still have 2 other witnesses to hear from, if you could. Thanks.
The reverse onus is not working in BC. We spend millions of dollars on policing. Are we getting good value? 90% disapproval in BC around the administration of justice. We feel betrayed in British Columbia. We want Parliament to enact stronger laws and stronger measures that are being proposed now. We want stronger measures, and we want the government to act, and we want the opposition parties to cooperate. The only conclusion we can draw is that the justice system in BC is full of holes. And part of my job now, looking after Ed's customers, is I spend a little time with his customers and I have a little cry with them. That's part of my job now. Hundreds, maybe thousands of people have been devastated by his murder. We want to see members of Parliament acting for just average, ordinary people like Ed. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll move now to Mrs. Schellenberg. You have 10 minutes as well, but you don't have to use it all up.
I just want to introduce you to Ed. Edward James Schellenberg, brother, uncle, friend, loving husband, and proud father of Rachel and Kevin. Ed was an avid outdoorsman. He enjoyed fishing on the Great Slave Lake for monster lake trout, hunting and guiding in the Northwest and Yukon territories, camping with family and friends beside beautiful rivers filled with rainbow trout, hiking and backpacking through rugged terrain, and then relaxing at the end of the day, gazing at the brilliant blanket of twinkling stars lighting the night sky. He appreciated all of his Creator's handiwork. Ed was an honest businessman, a hard-working provider for his family. He was a skilled tradesman, often repairing things that others had long since given up on. His customers he treated with respect and kindness, always doing his best to leave them satisfied with the job well done. He could often be convinced to stay for a cup of tea and a visit. He took the time to get to know his customers, enjoying the interaction. He was committed to giving his customers his best effort. October 19, 2007 was the end of a long week of work. Ed worked long days, but today he hoped to be home a little earlier, as he and his co-workers, brother-in-law Steve and his son Zach, were finishing off the apartment building that they had been working on all week. The last suite was Suite 1505. It was around 3 o'clock in the afternoon that he headed to the penthouse. What went on in Suite 1505, I don't really know. But that day, the lives of our family and the Mohan family changed forever. People have said Ed was in the wrong place at the wrong time. That statement is far from the truth. You see, he was doing his job. He had a commitment to service the fireplace in that suite. He had every right and reason to be there. Likewise, Chris Mohan. It was his home, a home he shared with his family. Both of our families were innocent, law-abiding Canadian citizens, unaware of the evil that threatened us from behind our neighbor's door. The past 16.5 months have been a roller coaster of emotions: shock, anger, disbelief, denial, incredible grief, and untold loss. Our lives have been forever changed by people and circumstances we had no control over and could never have fathomed happening to our family. Ed won't walk his daughter down the aisle on her wedding day or see his son become the man he will become. His life was taken by evil men who had no regard for the lives they destroyed. Their motivation is greed, greed for power, greed for money. These are issues that need to be addressed here today to ensure that a day like October 19th doesn't happen to another family. As members of Parliament, you wanted this job, and we gave it to you. You now have the responsibility that comes with the job to lead this country. We expect nothing less. I'm not here today to talk politics, but rather to encourage you to work together, all parties, all levels of government, businessmen and women, and private citizens. Together, we need to tackle the issues of public safety that are raging out of control in British Columbia.
Thank you. And Ms. Mohan, you've got 10 minutes as well.
I'm just going to put the picture of my son here. And this is my son, Christopher Mohan. Honourable members of the Justice Committee, I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be a witness and a victim of crime, and mostly to be the voice of my son. My name is Eileen Mohan, and I'm the mother of Chris Mohan. My innocent son was murdered on October 19, 2007, as he left our home to go to play his weekly basketball game. He was on his 7th season when rival gang members came to murder. Rival gang members along the way met my son in the building and took his life because they saw him as a witness. I had just spoken to my son an hour or so ago before he was murdered. Chris was my only son, the youngest of the 2 children, the baby of our home, and he remains the light and love of my life. Prior to October 19th, I was, honorable members, Mrs. Eileen Mohan. Today I sit before you as Miss Eileen Mohan, after 28 years of marriage, has been ended. The brutal murder of my son took a toll on our personal lives and led me to take the role of an advocate for my son, while my wounded husband left to be on his own in order to ensure his emotional survival. Life has certainly not been kind to my son or I, for I believe the safest place on earth is your home. And how do you know who your neighbors are when they portray themselves as innocent victims? Yes, we lived beside criminals who dealt with drugs, guns, and were members of prolific gangs. Little did I know how much danger these individuals represented until my son's life was stolen. It was like living beside a ticking time bomb which exploded and caused the destruction of my entire family. I have a daughter, Petrina, whose heart is in pieces as mine because she was as close to her baby brother as I was. It took me a week and a half to prepare for my son's funeral because simply I did not know what to do. How does a mother prepare herself to bury her own son? When I envisioned as a parent that when I'm old and gray, he would bury me. In our Indian heritage, honorable members, when we grow old, our children look after us. And I was looking forward to getting old with my son and his children at my side. That enjoyment and pleasure and being witness to Chris's life was taken away from me and my family. Today, I am not sure whether my daughter would ever get married because she's so emotionally broken, seeing how in a split of a second the life of her brother was taken and the permanent damage that caused her parents' marriage. Honorable members, prior to October 19th, I was the person who did Indian classical dance and who had started dancing since grade 2 till October 19th. I was on my way to get the Indian classical dances certificate. I am a professional banker registered with IROC. After completing all my banking accreditations, I had spare time and I had a passion for fashion design and sewing. I put myself into school 4 days a week to take fashion design course. I was into my 2nd year at VCC when Chris was murdered. And today, I neither have the passion for fashion design, sewing, or dancing. I had on November 1st, I buried my son. And from that day forward, I had organized rallies, anniversary masses, written to the Prime Minister, the Justice Minister, spoken to rallies, conferences, and workshops, taken part in awareness of documentary to curb the freedom of these gangsters and bring awareness. This gang violence, honorable members, it's 50 years in the making. This happened under the watch of the previous federal governments and provincial governments. And how because how Hells Angels grew from strength to strength. Today, they have charter houses in each provinces, and no one can touch them. Seeing how they were treated in courts, they were given conditional sentences, house arrest, one-day sentence, 6-month sentences, paved the way to the gang members that we have today. Hells Angels are silent partners today of all these gang members because they are well organized. I have a mission to touch these gangsters as personally, legally, as they have touched our lives illegally. And I have put myself into school, and today I'm taking criminology classes in order to educate myself and see how best I can support other family members who have gone through this tragedy and try to make policy changes. At the same time, keeping in mind, honorable members, that members of organized crime represent just a small fraction of our community. That said, we are currently spending millions and millions of dollars and many, many man-hours because our justice system has simply become a legal system. How do we bring our justice system to represent the society at large? From the legal system today, we feel represents only the criminals. How do we restore public confidence in our system? We need to balance the rights of the society and ensure the public safety, because today we feel that the rights of the criminals have been placed way above the society's rights and our collective greater goods. I believe that my son's murder and other murders could have been prevented, and/or his murder case could have already been brought before the courts should the recent recommendations presented in Ottawa by our BC Solicitor General and Attorney General were fully implemented, and I fully support them too. I have in my list that you have with you done a research while studying criminology of remand credit, and the 4 individuals that were killed along my son was given double time credit and convictions that shouldn't have been given to them. I will let you read that part. And on the second part is touching what Steve Brown said. BC courts, on the contrary to Ontario and Quebec, have adopted the approach that the application of tertiary ground during bail proceedings should only be in the rare and exceptional case. And I have given you an example, Regina versus Buddha, right there. And, you know, the public, the media, the police have all said that why are our criminals walking the streets free? This is because they only apply the primary and secondary clause and not the tertiary clause. And I've been studying that in my criminology class also. Legal applications, the impractical, which should be removed from that section 487.1, bracket 1 of the Criminal Code, therefore result in more practical process in obtaining legal authorization from the Justice of Peace for warrants. And I'll leave you with that to read. And I have also given you the recent case versus Regina versus MBAS, and that supports that. Criminal bench of BC courts, and I feel this is very important because today there is a clear need for an institution to institute a criminal bench in BC, Supreme Court level, and in each province in order to ensure that judges presiding over criminal crime trials, often for murders and violent offenses involving organized crimes, are appointed from criminal law practice and therefore have the necessary experience to make a sensible trial decision and judgment. We are not seeing this in British Columbia, and there's an outcry in public that why are these people walking the streets? It's because judges appoint judges. And judges just don't care what the public's opinions are. They think because they're an entity of their own and cannot be touched by the Attorney General, can only be advised by the Attorney General, they really don't get it in British Columbia. And police, I think we need more police, and I've given you that also. And I've given you my conclusion right there, but what I want to say in my conclusion also is I am very encouraged what I see today, because organized crime was 50 years in the making, and I believe that we will not let another 50 years go by before anything is done, or let our grandchildren or children resolve this. I'm really encouraged that we have a committee here and a government and a provincial government that is ready to do something. All they need is support, and we do need support from all parties, and I believe all parties are represented here. If they can take this message to their own parties and say, in British Columbia, the bullets are flying. We are touched, and we need assistance, so please help. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Ms. Mohan, and thank you to all three of you for your compelling testimony. We're going to give an opportunity for members to ask questions of you. So I'm going to go first to Mr. Dhaliwal, and he's going to ask some questions. And you're sharing your time with Mr. Dos Santos?
Yes.
Right? You've got 5 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, Mr. Chair, I would like to say that I think I speak not just for me, my family, but for my constituents and my community of Surrey and Delta when I say our hearts go out to you and your families. And I would also like to thank you all for your courage and your bravery to come out today and to speak to us and guide us in the direction that we should be heading, so the tragedies like happened to you should not happen to anyone else. We were together on a rally in Surrey that was organized by Paul Hilston and Trevor Locke. When we look at this, we are all shocked and appalled by the recent spike in gang violence, and we are caught in the middle of a new battleground now, and we all have to make sure that this battle does not become a drawn-out war. And I can tell you the work that you are doing for the last few years. I would like to thank you because this is the type of work that will make sure that this battle does not become a drawn-out or war. And when it comes to personally me supporting the legislation on crime, I always been very clear upfront, supporting to be the toughest on crime, irrespective of which party brought in the legislation. But on the other hand, I have always advocated for more police resources and community resources to deal with the people that are vulnerable to these gang members. So it's been my 2 minutes. I would like to pass it on to Mr. Desai if you want to make some remarks first.
Yeah, well, I too would like to thank you. It is not easy to do what you're doing. You have obviously turned personal tragedies into constructive work and advocacy on behalf of all Canadians, and I would personally like to thank you, and as a British Columbian, I must admire your courage. I'm not going to ask you any questions. You have spelled out your views very clearly. I would, of course, look at the presentation that you've made and read up on some of the cases that you've attached or mentioned. But rest assured, when we come to issues of crime and public safety, no one comes to these issues in a partisan political fashion. We may differ at times and do so vigorously and rigorously, but ultimately we share I can only imagine the pain that you've gone through, but we share the conviction with you. All of us share the conviction around this table and in this House that we need to do more and we need to do better on this issue for all Canadians. Thank you.
Thank you for those remarks. We'll move on to Monsieur Ménard.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would also like to say how courageous I find the initiative you've undertaken here, and how we can easily or how hard it is, rather, for us to understand the drama of the dramatic impact of the experience of what you've gone through. So there are, I hope, 3 consolations for you here. First of all, I've been a member here since 1995, and I can tell you that the House has proven in the past that when it's an issue of fighting organized crime, it's easy enough to arrive at a consensus. You may recall that in some communities, Montreal, and Mr. Petit referred to that earlier, we experienced something that's similar to what's going on in BC. There are differences that have to be pointed out. It was really the Hells Angels against the Rockers at that point in time, and it's, I think, not so much the kind of case in BC currently, but we agreed very quickly on the fact that there had to be a new offense created, and it was the anti-gang provisions that had not previously been in the criminal code. And so it's 5 people at least who are committing serious offenses in order to materially or financially benefit the organization. So the police felt it was not good to keep the number 3, and it was brought, or 5 rather, it was dropped down to 3. Organized crime is an area that evolves very quickly. So following that, that provision was cut in 2 to facilitate the accusations that could, or the charge that could be brought. So we needed to really try and understand exactly what the reality is in 2008 versus what the reality was in 1995. So we're very sensitive to what's going on in BC, to such a degree that we have all agreed that we must travel to BC, and this should happen in April. So we are seeking the tools that will allow us to bring the correct charges. I heard you talk against the judges, and I can understand your perspective. However, I don't think that that's where the solution lies. I think that police officers have to have the tools needed to bring those charges, and then we have to make their initiatives effective. Now, I support the bills. I think there has to be a 25-year penalty or sentence. I think that these people can't just be let out on bail all the time. That will make sure that they don't create the networks they have, and that will be better than minimum sentences. And I think it will be more effective than other measures. But the police officers must be given better tools, and I think that you can count on us to not be partisan. You can count on us to work very, very hard and work diligently, and I think that the terrible experiences that you have had will help us and allow us to go even farther and in this battle in which we are engaged. So thank you so much for your courage, and you can count on us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and like the rest of the speakers, I want to thank you for coming. I can imagine, having children of my own and extended family of my own, how difficult it is for you to deal with the loss of your family members. Let me assure you, we don't get very many witnesses like you in front of this committee. We have not historically. I've been on this committee for just about 5 years now. We do occasionally, and I want to say to you that when we do, as perhaps Mr. Menard was saying, they inspire us to keep doing our job, to try and find methods within our justice system, our criminal justice system, to target always is to prevent any crimes. But how to deal with them, how to provide our police and our courts with the tools to both prevent and prosecute when that becomes necessary. It's not a perfect system by any means, and Mr. Brown, I guess in particular the points that you've made with some specific problems, and I guess Ms. Mohan you have as well in BC. You know, I think we need to address that, and so we need to be working. I think all of us, at least from all parties, met with your Attorney General and Solicitor General when they were here, I guess it was a week and a half ago now. They've certainly drawn to our attention the needs they have from us at the federal level. We're attempting to respond to those as quickly as we can. And similarly, we said back to them, there are obviously needs that they have to respond to within their jurisdiction. The point I want to make is that work is going on now, and your presence here, and I'm sure in British Columbia when you meet with them, is an instigation on our part to keep working at this, to not let up. I don't believe that we can ever completely eradicate crime in our society, at least not for some centuries. But I also firmly believe that there is a lot more we can do to lower the crime rate, to shut down a lot of these gangs and organized crime more generally, and that we need to be working on that very extensively. Your presence here today will just keep us inspired to keep working at it. So thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Comartin. We have a question, I believe, or some thoughts from, is it Mr. Warwa or Mr. Rathskever? Mr. Warwa?
Thank you, Chair. I also want to thank each of you for being with us here today, for sharing your grief and your courage to be here to challenge us to bring back safety to our communities. And that is a task that I believe every member of this committee takes seriously, and hearing from you and your challenges to us does motivate us in that direction. I met, I believe, Mr. Brown and Ms. Mohan about a year ago in my office, and tragically things have gotten worse instead of better. A lot of the recent shootings started in Langley, in the Walnut Grove area, and my immediate response was to phone my family to see that if they were okay. And I heard from parents that they were out shopping at the local grocery store, and they were experiencing things that we'd never even imagined. Hitting the floor, being beside a car that had its windows blown out and somebody killed in it, people running for their lives. I talked to a parent a week ago. They have a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old, and they've taught their child what to do. Don't talk to a stranger. What to do in emergencies. Stop, drop, and roll, and the different things that you teach a child, and they've now taught this child what to do if the child hears gunfire. The 6-year-old is to hit the floor, jump out of his car seat, get on the floor of the car, and take his little brother out of his car seat and pull him down onto the floor too. So this is how people are living, and we have to do something. We introduced, and it came into force in May of last year, the Getting Tough on Violent Crime. And we, in that new legislation, there was a change of a reverse onus on bail release. And Mr. Brown, you brought up 3 main things: the 2-for-1 remand, bail for serious offenses, and conditional sentencing. And 2 of those were in that Getting Tough on Violent Crime. Conditional sentencing for the serious offenses is not to be permitted, and in reverse onus on bail for the serious crimes. My question for you, and I believe you were at a recent rally in Surrey, how
how are these serious, dangerous offenders that, in your case, I believe there's been no one charged, no conviction for you. So in your case, we don't know who committed those murders. If it was one person or a number of people, nobody. So, but when we do catch somebody, they're charged and they're released on bail. How does that happen? And having a background in loss prevention and writing up fatality reports for the Provincial Corporation, ICBC, you look at the causals, what caused that situation, and what are the solutions to try to keep that from ever happening again. So you've highlighted eloquently, all of you, some of your perspective on some of the causals. Could you elaborate on solutions?
Well, I'll comment on that. For example, the reverse onus provision for bail that you brought in last year, most of the time the Crown prosecutors will not even argue it. They will not even ask for it. They feel it's not strong enough, and when they do, the judges never buy the argument anyways. So it's completely useless. There's a frustration. I think that the judges who want to apply it, they just feel it's not, whatever the wording is, however it's been written. I know that our Solicitor General in British Columbia said that he wants to see that reverse onus extended to a broader range of offenses, and gun-related and gang-related offenses. But I can tell you, just before I left, I spoke with a police inspector in the city of Vancouver, and he said most times the prosecutors will not even bother to try to apply reverse onus. They don't feel that they could make a sufficient argument to a judge. I don't know what the solution is.
Anybody else have ideas on solutions?
I think we need to have judges who understand gun violence, gang violence, drug trafficking, till the bench is willing to prosecute these people in the way that they have been terrorizing our streets, our families, and they have disregard for the public, no respect for any life at all. It is in the hands of the judges to put these people behind bars, and I totally believe that. These people need to do their job seriously, and they are not. So unless we have some sort of a place where we could go and see how each judge has been doing their duties, and how we can put more judges who understand the situation that's happening in our society and the cases that's coming before them, this will never be resolved. We need the commitment of judges. We can do everything else, but if it comes to the court of law and the judge does not recognize the present and clear danger, then all is lost.
Well, thank you to all three of the witnesses. The reason you haven't received more questions is probably because your testimony has been so powerful and compelling. Most of us at this table can't even begin to imagine what you've gone through and the loss that you've suffered. So again, thank you so much. And I just encourage you to keep on the good fight. Hopefully there will be a positive response from our government to address the needs that are clearly out there with respect to crime, violent crime, drug-related crime, gun crime, and organized crime. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
We'll just take a minute break while the room clears out, and then we have some items of business to discuss in camera.